A perfect example of this is what happened with the housing program. The people who felt good, they're entitled to it, they deserve a house, a free house, let the government do whatever they can. And also, it was this magnificent thing about inflation. Get them to hold a house, the house will go up in value, a $100,000 house will be $200,000, then the people can borrow against this money, and it'll be a perpetual wealth machine. Not realizing that Austrian free market economics fully explained it, and that's what you call a bubble that's created by the Federal Reserve, loose monetary policy, and that's where the trouble comes from. Convinced that the entitlement system was right and that they grabbed the moral high ground, and those of us who disagreed that we didn't care about our fellow man and we had no humanitarian instincts. But the true humanitarian has to understand, if you care about your neighbor, if you care about prosperity, if you care about the middle class, and if you want to maximize wealth and fairly distribute it better than any other system, you have to believe in freedom. You have to believe in sound money. You have to believe in the free market. Otherwise, it's a failed policy. It's a shame that we haven't been able to convince people in the past that a system of freedom is a humanitarian system. Instead, we lost that argument, but guess what? We're starting to win it now, because the failure is all around us, whether it's the failure of the housing program or the failure of the foreign policy with these endless wars, the failure of the government to protect our civil liberties. In the name of freedom, they come and attack us and invade our homes without search warrants. Let me tell you, the defenders of our revolution and the writers of the Constitution would be embarrassed if they knew what we were putting up with our own government. But once again, they play on fears and innuendos and try to scare the people. After 9/11, of course, we had to go after the bad guys. And I voted to go after the bad guys, go after the Al-Qaeda that was responsible. But look, it took over 10 years to get hold of bin Laden. At the same time, they took 10 years to invade countries that they were just itching to invade in and occupy. They used it as an excuse. But what about what they did to, what the Congress and the President did to the American people? The American people weren't guilty. But what has happened? They went and immediately passed the Patriot Act, which undermines your liberties. The Patriot Act is one thing for certain: it is not patriotic. So the best thing we can do with the Patriot Act is repeal it as quickly as possible. He had a different name on the Patriot Act. If it had to repeal the Fourth Amendment Act, nobody would have voted for it. So instead of saying we're going to repeal the Patriot Act, how about restore the Fourth Amendment to the American people? Attacks on our civil liberties systematically. In a time of war and economic crises, it seems like in the past that people are too willing to give up their liberties, even though our founders warned us, and they said if you're willing to give up your liberties for safety and security, you're going to end up losing both. And I am convinced, the more I think about it, I'm absolutely convinced, if it is safety and security that you want, you never have to give up any of your rights at all, any of your privileges, never. But actually, under the conditions that we have today, the economic crisis that came, they blamed, of course, there was too much freedom and too much free markets, and the Depression was blamed on the gold standard and free markets, so therefore they had to get rid of those very things. And it's only now, the first time in 100 years, that we got the real culprit out on front, who creates the business cycle, creates the bailouts for the privileged class, and that is the Federal Reserve System. But the entitlement system has been with us too long, and this idea that entitlements are right is absolutely wrong. They are not rights. You do not have these rights to take from other people. But this is the reason that we have to understand what personal liberty is all about. And we have to know where liberty comes from. It doesn't come from our government. Our government can't give us our liberty. The government can't give us our right to our life. They're supposed to protect our liberties and protect our property, but they have done the opposite. We have to understand that our lives and our liberties come from our Creator, not from our government. Constitutional republic, the purpose of the government is to protect those liberties, to protect your right to own property, not to control the property and tell you when you can use it and can't use it and how you can use it, and then you have to pay the taxes on it, and anything goes wrong, they're going to blame you or use this excuse for extreme environmental positions that some people take. I think we have lost the concept of private property, but it really was initiated with this whole concept of the income tax. The income tax, even if you paid a small amount, it's very, very dangerous, because the income tax is based on the assumption that everything you earn belongs to the government. Then the government will write a law and permit you to keep a certain portion as long as you follow the rules and what the conditions are. So we've conceded the whole argument that it belongs to the government, and therefore they control our property, they control our lives, and undermines the productive segment of the economy. And this is why I'm so sad that we weren't able to defend this position, because there's no reason in the world why we should ever give up on the defense of this if we care about people. If you want to help people, you want prosperity, you want jobs. But look at the results. Today, I think the evidence is so clear, more than ever in our history. Before, we'd have these mild downturns, but we would never have the horrendous debt. And this is a worldwide problem brought on through the monetary system. So we have the opportunity now to defend what we believe in, that government fails. Has government done a good job overseas? No. The government is bankrupting us. And that's exactly what Al-Qaeda wanted. They wrote about it. And they say, we want to do this. We want to antagonize the Americans. They're going to come over and they're going to get bogged down in various countries. We know what we'll do. They thought we might go into one country or two. They never dreamed we'd be in 6 and 7 and looking and getting anxious for the next few to go into. Right now, we have an administration and the majority in Washington, D.C., they can't wait till they can get involved in Syria. Then they're going to march into Iran. We don't need that attitude. But what we need to do is know why it's important for us to understand these principles, because it's vitally important now. But today, the failure is all around us, whether it's the housing programs, the economy, the failure of the monetary system. And that is why we have this opportunity to present the case. Now, do we have to start from scratch? No. Other countries might have to when they get this way. But we had the greatest experiment in freedom than any other country. And therefore, we were the wealthiest country ever. We had the largest middle class ever. And because we have rejected those convictions, where are we today? Our middle class is shrinking. The jobs are going away. Our students are graduating with horrendous debts and no jobs available to them. So this is obviously a time that we have to challenge the status quo, and this is what the problem is with what we're being offered today. The other candidates offer just tinkering around the edges with the status quo. They don't challenge foreign policy. They don't challenge monetary policy. They don't challenge the attack on our civil liberties, and they don't challenge the attack on the spending. Nobody else is talking about cutting spending. And for a starter, I want to cut $1 trillion out of the budget in the first year. Smaller audience when we get to discuss a few of these, and I say, how's that going to help? The government's spending this money. Isn't this all an economic stimulus? I said, no, it's an economic negative. The government, where do they get the money? They either inflate, which is destructive to all of us, or they tax us and they take it out, so we lose there. But then when they spend it, they say they invested. Governments can't invest. They have no idea what investments mean. They spend it and give it to their cronies, and they bail out the rich folks on Wall Street and in the military-industrial complex, and they pass out this this money. So it doesn't solve the problem at all. And this is why we have to say this is an opportunity for us to show what kind of conditions we have, where we have gone wrong, and what we need to do. But it wouldn't be all that complicated if we just had more people in Washington who at least read the Constitution. Our civil liberties have been under attack. They've been under attack now and then over a period of time. Certainly during wartime, people let their guard down thinking, oh, it's unnecessary. And of course, I don't believe it ever is necessary. And it's certainly not because we're at war that we should give up our liberties. But, you know, on New Year's Day, the president gave us a wonderful New Year's present. He signed the National Defense Authorization Act. So now the Congress did this, wrote the bill for him, and said that he can use the military to arrest American citizens if they're a suspect, with no charges, no trial, no attorney, secret prison, and held indefinitely. And that's put into the law. So one thing, in addition to what you would see in a republic with the elimination of the income tax and the Federal Reserve, you would see the repeal not only of the Patriot Act, you would make sure a president can never arrest somebody with the military on suspicion. Permission of the Congress, the president announced a year ago that the president, he claims it's not prohibited in the Constitution, so therefore he's allowed to do it. So he says that a president has the authority to assassinate American citizens, just out of the clear blue. Oh, only the bad guys. But I thought the trials were for the bad guys as much as the other guys to sort it all out. Yeah. We gave trials to the Nazi war criminals. We gave a trial to Timothy McVeigh. We've given trials to the really terrible people. But that is what it's supposed to be. But to just say that they're a suspect, in the laws now say that a suspect is somebody that just might be associated with an organization, just an association. Maybe that's visiting a website. Maybe it's getting emails. Maybe it's attending a meeting. Who knows what it means? It's very, very vague. So this is why I am sure our founders would be very, very disappointed with what we're doing. But the good part is a lot of people are waking up to this, and they're becoming aware of exactly what's happening in Washington, and they want to see it change. When I started talking about the National Defense Authorization Act, all I needed to say is exactly what I did a few minutes ago, say the name of the bill, and there were boos and hisses because the people knew exactly what I was talking about. But I know you didn't hear it on national TV, and you didn't hear it from the politicians, and you don't read it in the newspaper, but fortunately we do have an internet, and that is the way information of great value is now being spread. So once again, I think those who are threatened by what we're trying to do know that the internet is a danger to them. It's a blessing to us. So this is the reason they had to stop Online Piracy Act, to take over the internet. This should give us encouragement because a lot of people heard about it. A few of us spoke out, and guess what? They heard your voices, and they withdrew those bills both from the House and the Senate. So this means that we still have enough freedom in this country to have an effect on the government, and this is our goal. For me, you know, a lot of, we call things the Patriot Act and other things, and who are the patriots and who aren't. And we too often have heard, especially in Washington, when I've taken a position against going to war without a declaration, which sounded to me like a rather patriotic idea, but they would accuse me of being un-American and unpatriotic. But there is nothing unpatriotic about challenging your government when your government is wrong.